group meeting. Thank you for coming. It's lovely to see so many faces and to hear how far people have travelled as well today. So thank you for making the effort. For those who haven't met me, my name is Nikki Zimmermann, and I lead the Red... Oh, I haven't touched anything yet. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Very sensitive.
Right. Oh, I'll try not to breathe. Is it? Yeah. And I'm part of the Rare Dementia support team with my wonderful colleague here, Professor Crutch. And we're here today with the team to help support you, give you lots of information. The RDS team here today, they're here. We have at the back, Claire, do you understand her? And Bridget, and Emma. And if you're wondering why we've got a young lad in the corner, it's Bring Your Child to School Day. My son is here helping with the IT today, so Joe's here as well. So any IT problems you got, just go and speak to him. So just a few housekeeping rules for today, really, or announcements. So the toilets, as you know, there's toilets across the back of this room here. If you do need an accessible toilet, if you go out to the reception, there's a lift and it's up on the first floor. The emergency exits, there's some doors here, and obviously out the back, out the side as well. So we're not expecting a fire alarm, and I'm quite fast at running, so follow me. We are recording the talks only this morning, but they're being recorded by Zoom. Very high tech. So don't worry about any of you being involved in it. Unfortunately, it's just the speakers here that you'll see our faces with it. Well, I apologise for anybody else, it's just my face. We will be sending out an evaluation form later to you. It'll be a survey via email. If you could please fill it in and please put as much comments as you want, what you've enjoyed, what you've not enjoyed, what you'd like to see. We really like doing these seminars for you, the carers joint seminars we do 4 times a year, 2 for early to mid stage and 2 for mid to late stage, but we also do the seminars for the separate groups as well. So getting your feedback is really pivotal to what we do going forwards. Just one sort of notice on the seminar today, it is very much focused on the later stage. We tend to do mid to late stage, but today we are really looking at more advanced in the later stage. If at any time you find any of the presentations distressing at all, or just want to take 5 minutes, please do feel free to slope out. Nobody's going to judge you for that at all, and we've got staff here that we can go and sit with you and have a chat. So please do feel completely free to do that. Right.
Shall I? Oh. Looks like we go down one. So hi everyone, if I've not met you before, my name is Crutch. My sort of day job is Professor of Neuropsychology at the Dementia Research Centre at UCL in Queen Square. So I may have seen you with my clinical hat on or a research hat on, but also with Nikki and Susie Barker, help to co-lead the Rare Dementia Support Service. So thank you so much for coming. This brief slide is just a quick reminder about who's in the room. And just before I go through the diagnoses, it's just a reminder that all of you have come for different reasons at different stages. So it's not only what Nikki was saying, that some of you may find what's talked about today absolutely spot on for your situation and where you are. For others, it may feel like some of the issues we're talking about are at quite some distance. But it's also just a reminder that we may all of us, be in a different mood today. It's a nice warm sunny day. Some people may feel positive. It's a day where you can hopefully find some time for yourself, some time to reflect, some time to think and to build friendships and share conversations and experience with other people. Others of you may have come today feeling like you're in some sort of perpetual autumn or winter in your lives. Whatever you have brought today, we hope that you can be yourselves, Please, there's no need for pretense. If you are happy, be happy. If you are feeling in a really dark place, feel free to share that. There's no embarrassment about tears or crying or saying, that's a really positive experience, but it's not been my experience. You're allowed to share differences of views. This is not some kind of group think. Everyone has to say, oh yes, yes, I agree. You don't have to agree. So please feel free to say what is on your minds and what's on your hearts. But briefly, I'll introduce Dawn Brooker in a moment when she comes to speak to us, but we're delighted to have Dawn, Professor at the University of Worcester down. Dawn's not been to one of our meetings before, so I wondered if you wouldn't mind just waving at her as we go through these different diagnoses.
Not quite yet.
Very good, very good.
That's a psychological crutch, yes.
Psychological and emotional, and also any hecklers.
But it's also just a reminder for all of you that this is one of our meetings where people are coming together who themselves, or in this case, are often caring for and about someone who may have one of a number of different types of dementia. We try to be as jargon-free as we can be. What we often find is people know their own jargon, like the 3-letter code for their particular diagnosis that their loved one has, but doesn't know everyone else's codes. So just to briefly try and remind you all, so FTD or FFTD, the familial form of FTD, it stands for frontotemporal dementia. Those are a bunch of diseases that tend, as they suggest, to affect the front of the brain, typically affecting behaviour and personality, but also language first and foremost. But as with all dementias, may spread and progress and include other problems. PCA stands for posterior cortical atrophy, or which is a posh way of saying back of the brain shrinkage. So those are people who tend to have Alzheimer's disease affecting the visual and spatial centres of the brain. So very often a very, very different set of problems. PPA, or primary progressive aphasia, again a posh way of saying dementias that start with language change. For some people that might be difficulties saying what they know they want to communicate. For other people that might be having difficulty understanding what other people are saying. For others it might be finding words and hesitating in speech. YOAD stands for young onset Alzheimer's disease. So that is Alzheimer's disease that might typically present with memory problems, but may also affect vision and language and behaviour, but where symptoms occur before the age of 65. FAD, familial Alzheimer's disease, people who have any form of Alzheimer's disease caused by a gene that sadly runs in their family. That means half of offspring of someone who's got the gene have a chance of developing what's often an early onset form of Alzheimer's. And DLB or LBD, Lewy body dementia, is the combination of people who have dementia with Lewy bodies or Parkinson's disease dementia. So particularly difficulties with thinking and seeing, but also with some motor symptoms, often with things like hallucinations and fluctuations. I don't want to say any more than that, but it's just to remind you all, we've all come to this with different challenges, different experiences, and perhaps in different moods today. So thanks for being here, be kind to each other. We hope, as always, that you'll get lots out of the meeting. And as our colleague Jill Walton always says, anything that's said that is not for you, just leave it in the room behind you when you go. Okay. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. So you've all got your dots on your stickers, so at lunchtime you can find people with the same condition. But you can speak to anyone, it's okay, you are allowed to speak to anyone. So I'm just going to do a couple of updates. Oops, before we start. And this is...
Please, it's
Press the sideways one.
the sideways one. Okay, let's just practice backwards, forwards, step forwards. Yes, okay, left and right, not up and down.
Right, okay. Leave my hands here so you can see. So for those of you who haven't been here before, this is the venue that we're going to be using this year. We've already had lots of seminars here. It's a lovely place and we're very appreciative that we can actually come here to have our venues here, have our seminars here. But next year, excitement, we have the Rare Dementia Support Centre opening. So we will have a proper home. So it's going to be fantastic. We'll have lots of space. We'll probably be having some smaller meetings, but we might be able to have some more meetings as well. It'll be a wonderful home. We'll be able to tell you more about that. But we hope to be opening the doors in autumn 2025. Thank you all of you that did your bookings through Eventbrite. It's the easiest way we can do it. So please, bear that mind in future. That as long as if you're booking for yourselves and booking for somebody else to come as well, we need you to book separately. We need people to be members because we need the data to see how many people we are supporting. And that brings us up to the RDS membership, which we've got about 70, 80 people in the room today. This isn't the RDS membership. We have 6,620 members now at RDS. So we are supporting lots of people all over the country and all over the world. So I hope that when you think you're very alone with this, that we've got lots of other members which we hope to connect you with, that will make that journey feel a little bit better for you. And because we have such a large membership, we're changing the way that we are doing our support. We're not diluting our support at all. But you will all know now that Emma joined us last year, and Emma is the admin queen. And it was like all my birthdays and Christmases come together of organising it. It's fantastic. So from the beginning of July, we will be having appointments for support calls going through what we're going to call our virtual support clinic. Emma will be booking them. You will not have to wait too long with them because there will be lots of spaces through the clinic. So it'll be basically run like a GP surgery, but you'll be able to get an appointment very quickly, and we'll be able to give you an appointment for about 45 minutes, and this is really going to help us to help support more of you. We've also got our peer support groups, and I know lots of you here from the peer support groups I run, but we have them for all types of different rare dementias we support. So if you haven't gone along to one yet, please have a word with one of the staff while you're here today, and we can get you to come along, and that means you'll be able to meet other people through Zoom every month. And just the last thing is the themed educational programmes. We've got a couple of programmes for late stages at the moment, and we're going to mention one in particular later, which I know again a lot of you have been through, which is fantastic, which Claire facilitates. And before we leave today, you'll get more information on that. And Eva is here. Eva, do you want to just come and say a couple of words quickly?
Hi, my name is Eva Tate. I'm the Major Appeals Manager for the National Brain Appeal, and we're the charity that helps support rare dementia support through fundraising. So we raise between 350 and 500,000 a year to help with the support groups and staff and associated costs. And we're also raising 7,800,000 for the centre, the world's first centre, which is here. I have a brochure if you'd like to see. Very happy to send it out to anybody as well if you'd like to know more. We've raised just over 7 million, so we've got a little bit more to go. Well, she says a little bit, it's quite a lot. But we do that through our amazing fundraisers, so lots of supporters who are members of RDS and members of the wider community. They take part in all sorts of community events and marathons and challenges, and we also apply to grant making trusts as well. So if there's anybody in this room that happens to be a member of a grant making trust, let me know. But also, we'd also like you to be part of the awareness raising side of the community as well. So we also help with sort of press and things like that. We had a garden at Chelsea Flower Show last year, with which we worked with Seb and members of the RDS community. It was an amazing experience and fantastic to see the garden being highlighted on Gardeners World and BBC Mamaty Don. That was a real highlight. The garden's now in Exbury Gardens, so if anybody would like to visit it, it's down in Hampshire. And we'll be taking lots of learnings from that garden and possibly some of the plants, certainly the water features, and putting them into a space at the back of the Rare Dementia Support Centre when that opens. So if anyone would like to talk to me about fundraising, I'm here at lunchtime, or you're very welcome to email me as well. You can find out more about fundraising when you sign up to be a member. You can also click on a link there to sign up to fundraising, or Nikki or any member of the team can put you in touch with me if you're interested in learning more about what we do and how we raise funds. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Eva. Thank you. So the agenda today, we're already running behind, so I'm glad of that, yeah. So we have some fantastic speakers this morning. Seb's already mentioned Dawn, who will be speaking sort of just before lunch today. But before Dawn speaks, we always think having our members speak at our events are really fantastic. It's really what brings people together, and it's their lived experience, which is so important to share and hopefully to help all of you as well. So we have a couple of our wonderful members who I know very well, who are going to be speaking this morning. We've got Robert and then Mihoko. And we're going to look at late stages, and we're going to look at the late stages within the care home and the late stages of caring at home as well. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to invite my lovely friend Robert to come and join me, as he has done many times before. Robert has been a member of RDS for several years now, and in recent years he's become an RDS champion and a cascader, which means he goes out and he raises awareness about rare dementias and especially PCA. And I've had the privilege to work with Robert on many occasions in many different locations. The most recent one was training paramedic students at St George's University, and I think we had over 100 there on the day. So the words from Robert and our other cascaders is absolutely vital to move things forward and make people more aware. So, without further ado, I will hand over to you, Robert. Do you want to come here? So you're...
Thank you very much.
There we go. Is that okay for you?
It's just one.
Shall I get out of the way now?
Good morning, everyone. Despite what Nikki says, I'm not a fan of football, but this is pre-match nerves about to kick in, so I hope it all works. If it doesn't, don't throw blood at me. As Nikki said, this is a talk about my experience and that of my beloved, now late wife, Catherine, in a care home. I agonised for a wee while about what to tell you and what might be helpful from our experience. And I just want to say that by no means is my talk the definitive answer. It depends on the care home operator, its size, how you're able to approach and relate to the staff. But I shall discuss some of the things that I found helped us through. So in the care home, I recommend from the word go that you soon get to understand how the care home functions and who there is responsible for care delivery overall. And if you can gain knowledge based on other people's lived experience in the home, talk to relatives of other residents, and especially to the care home staff that are working on the floor. And that expression means that they're in the lounge and about rather than stuck in the nurse's office. I do recognise, and I think we all do, RDS, that the decision to move one's beloved into a residential care home can actually be a positive step. Some people may not think so. But I learned a lot once my late wife became resident and had settled in. And when I'd understood how it all worked, it did help me manage our time there, but it took a little while to understand the process. So I just want to talk briefly about the stage of the disease. We talk about late stages and later stages. So the stage that someone is at depends on the subtype variant they have, and Sarah just been through the various types that RDS supports, there's 7 of them. And it's the impact upon each individual, the level that they're affected, the level of deterioration of their cognitive function, their reduced capacity, and their overall rate of decline. And it's rarely measured. And I just emphasise the bottom 2 lines there. No 2 persons will be identically affected. So what I say is only typical for our experience. And I just put this out to acknowledge that moving to a care home setting isn't always going to be the best answer for everyone in their later stages of dementia. In each case, the individual circumstances and the degree of mental and physical compromise from a rare dementia will be different. But this is just to remind us that everyone is different. So I'm now going to talk, hopefully fairly briefly, I've only got an hour, I think, isn't it? About our story, the last 20 months of Catherine's life in a local nursing home, living with PCA. After a severe fall and a prolonged spell in hospital, and evidence of seizures, Catherine needed greater care and I could consistently provide when she was discharged to home. I agonised about this dilemma for a number of nights, and then realised that I could no longer provide the care that she needed, even though we had carers coming in during the day. It was still a huge task. I think we were very fortunate. She was particularly a well nursed, once personal, and understood from me what her condition was, and learnt her physical and mental constraints. The care home that she went into had never experienced anyone with rare dementia, least of all PCA. So it was an educational task on my part and a steep learning curve on the part of the staff. So my talk is based on experience there. Catherine already had advanced PCA when she became a resident aged 68, and she died there aged 70. I'll just whiz through this because many of you will already know the constraints of PCA. But predominantly she had difficulty seeing things. As Seb said, the back of the brain can't process what the eyes see, so it's a brain side issue. She struggled with recognising, particularly my face, distinguishing colours and shapes. She couldn't coordinate her hands to eat, and drinking and feeding therefore were complicated. Sorry, it's got okay. I can see a cursor on the screen. I hope you can't. It's getting in the way. So she had a reduced sensation and numb sensitivity to pain, and this is relevant in a little while. She was unable to look after herself, to bathe and go to the toilet unaided, and she was doubly incontinent. And she got very confused with her medication. And the purpose of sharing that information with the care home staff was so that I thought and knew that they could fully appreciate the less obvious difficulties that she had, and her personal challenges, and her invisible dementia that very few staff could work out that she actually was compromised. And I considered that they needed to give her close attention. I'm now just going to cover some important aspects of the care provided in the home. I'll just touch on these topics. There's a huge amount more, but as I haven't got an hour, I don't have time to cover everything, so if you want to see me in the nutshell, some things trigger a thought with you, and I'm very happy to talk about it. So I want to talk about something which is vitally important in the care home. And until I went there, I didn't know there was such a thing. The care plan is absolutely essential, and the matron, the registered nurses, RNs, and the management need to have a factual talk with the new resident and their partner to assess cognition, mobility, and the resident's personal limitations when they enter the home. And they do need to fully comprehend and understand and learn about the rare condition and the manner of personal handling, and to talk about dress, food selection, and any dietary needs. Catherine had gluten-free allergy when she went in. Amazingly, after 3 months there, she was no longer allergic. I don't know what they did to her, but she managed to get over it. Something I've still got. However, the objective of the care plan is, as it says at the bottom, to set out and record daily what works, to provide systematic and continuity of care, and ideally to achieve daily contentment. And then there is the This Is Me document. This is a less formal document. So the care plan is something that is a formal document, and care home staff, and particularly the management, are obliged to keep that up to date. Very often, staff will find it difficult to fill that in on a regular basis. Predominantly, it should be done daily. In my experience, because there are pressures of time when staff are dealing with patients, they have to fill in a number of other documents, particularly the drug log, and they don't often get to fill the care plan in specifically. I used to make it my objective to try and read it on a fortnightly basis. So I would go to the nurse's office and say, can I possibly read the care plan for Catherine? What I did learn is, for goodness sake, don't ever try and get in the way of the duty nurse when the drug round is on the go, because they get very upset. So the This Is Me document. This is a document, as I said, less formal. sets out an individual's background, their life interests. And it's something that staff, particularly bank staff and agency staff, can look at rather than going through the formal process of the nurse's office of looking at the care plan. And ideally, it's a history of the key moments of the resident's life. Putting these simply, it helps staff interact with the resident and their familiar topics that they enjoy. So I sat down, and very occasionally you'll get given one of these in hospital if you're hospitalised. But it should ideally reflect what past experiences will be familiar and still enjoyed by the resident. What triggers positive memories? What can the staff do to interact with somebody? What does the person think and how do they communicate? And how do they relate to their surroundings, particularly now that they're in the care home? They may get very confused about the layout of the home, and it would be very helpful if they could have a walk around, if they're capable of doing that, or go around in a chair, just to reorientate themselves that this is no longer the home that they've probably been living in for the last umpty years. And what's their personality like? And what delights them? What don't they enjoy? And what can't they do? Essentially, I interpret that this is me document as being something that, if you looked at it, you could create a good day for them. So the activities and social engagement in the nursing home are very important. If possible, I try to maintain Catherine's routine that she followed at home, having a hairdresser once a week, a manicurist regularly, and a chiropodist regularly. It gives the resident a sense of still having some dignity in their life, a routine, and something that they can remember they enjoyed, if they did enjoy it. Chiropodist, not so much somebody. On music, if they enjoy music, the care home that Catherine went into was a small local home, and we had an activities coordinator who was absolutely magic, but she was very keen on belly dancing for some reason, and also belly dancing. And she brought in these belly dancers, and they did a beautiful performance, tinkling around their balloons and all sorts. And I said to Catherine at some point, I said, so what did you think of that? She says, I can't see it. She could hear the music, and she saw these people wafting around. And I said to the activities coordinator, it's very sweet of you to do that, but Catherine would rather be out in the garden if it's all the same to you. Singing for the brain is something that was a very popular activity, even though they couldn't go along with the beat. If you ever watched Morecambe and Wise, the piano, that was it for them. Couldn't keep up. And a pat dog came in. Does anybody know what a pat dog is, or not know what a pat dog is? Hands up if you know what a pat dog is. Oh, pretty good. So a pat dog is usually a very, very friendly, usually furry dog that comes in and walks around and gets mauled by both the nurses and the patients. It's incredibly tactile, and residents absolutely love it. And scheduled entertainment at home, quizzes, and Catherine could join in those, which she could answer bizarrely. Crossword questions when somebody couldn't get the right answer. We also spent a long time sitting and dozing. She used to say to me, I'm just looking at the inside of my eyelids, don't bother me. But she was having a rest, and it usually happens after lunch and after dinner. And getting up and bedtime, these two are very crucial times for residents. Getting up, sometimes they don't want to get up, and the staff that we work with never used to pressure people to get up. Frequently I go in on a Saturday and they'd say, oh, Catherine's still having her breakfast in bed. And in the evening, after supper, she was pretty keen, as are most residents, to go to bed, usually around 6 o'clock. And there's a mad panic on, because that's when, for some reason, I don't know why, that they de-staff the care home. So you normally get a couple of pairs, or four pairs during the day. Come 6 o'clock, they all go off shift. So managing the residents and knowing their limitations. Catherine had reduced mobility, she had a slow reaction time, she had complication due to her loss of faculties, in our case Catherine's impaired vision. And when she was being moved around the care home, after about 4 months she found that it was impossible for her to stand out of the chair and to walk. And she was then put into a wheelchair to be moved about, taken to the lift and taken upstairs where her bedroom was. And very soon the staff got into the habit of hoisting her. Now for somebody that's got PCA, and you're in a hoist, which means you're lifted up out of the chair, in a sling, and you float around in air with no reference point whatsoever. It used to make Catherine feel very nauseous. And I used to have to say to the staff, could you just please explain what you're going to do? And somebody, stand by her so that she's not waving around like the end of a brain. And I put this at the bottom, just be aware of the deprivation of liberty safeguards. Catherine had this habit of what I call porpoising out of a wheelchair. She would arch her back and then just slide gently, gracefully onto the floor. And she did that a number of times, and once in the lift, and the lift doors then got jammed, and there was mad chaos. The staff not trying to get her out or get her in. So I said, could you please put a lap strap on her? And they said, we're not allowed to because of restraint. And I said, if I sign a form, I don't matter who produces the form, she ought to be strapped into the chair because it's just dangerous otherwise. And after a wee while, that became normal. So moving around the care home, particularly somebody with PCA, I mean, Catherine's lost her ability to walk unaided after a while. But it's very important. Nikki and I went to a very smart, very new care home not so long ago, and we were amazed at the number of tripping hazards and beautiful flower pots, shiny mirrors, and everything that somebody who's got any sort of form of rare dementia would just go, I don't like this. But their proposed attraction for this was to encourage carers and relatives to come along. I think this is a 5-star hotel, and that's the reason we're paying the price. But actually, it was very practical. Prescribed medication, Catherine lost the ability to swallow tablets. She used to put them between her lip and her gum, pretend that she'd swallowed them, and clearly she hadn't. And very soon she moved into liquid formulation, and it was put in her drink so that she would drink whatever was in the beaker and she would take the medication. And sometimes she had strange reaction, particularly to some of the painkiller medication. And it's important that both you as the carer and staff get to see and notice side effects. I used to go in pretty much every day, and I could work out, it's a bit like watching television die gently in your eyes, that after a while I could tell the differences with Catherine. When you get a large turnover of staff, they don't tend to see this continuity, the lack of continuity. Catherine couldn't describe the symptoms of pain because she couldn't remember that she was in pain. So it was very difficult to work out whether she did have backache or not. And the duty nurse used to say, well, if Catherine's in any way looking uncomfortable, whack down a couple of paracetamol seemed to be the answer. And it generally does sort the problem out. And another big issue for me was that she couldn't detect the sensation of sitting in a wet pad during the day. So I tried to encourage the staff to change her after breakfast, after lunch, and after supper. And then that made their life easier as well. I will just say that being undressed and cleaned by another person can be extremely frightening, humiliating, and in most cases embarrassing, particularly if you're a female. And most care homes will have males on the staff, and they tend not to be spoken to a female gender or a male gender. They tend to work together depending on the staffing arrangements. And Catherine latterly became very uncooperative and resistant to being bathed and being toileted and then dressed and undressed. And it was her response, we worked out, to feeling out of control, being rushed and afraid and confused by what was expected of her. She just couldn't compute. So staff needed to explain to her what was to be done. I encouraged them to get the equipment, washcloths, towels, basin, whatever was needed. And then when all was set, to then proceed and to preserve her dignity in doing so. Breaking each task into steps, explaining it in a measured voice and a reassuring voice to the person being cared for, usually works, and it did help Catherine to accept the care that was about to be given. But I do accept, we should accept, that staff do have to work to a schedule, mostly in pairs, as I've said, and they often don't have a lot of leeway to do their tasks and with the time. So they're under pressure from matron or the general manager to get round all the rooms. I mean, we were very fortunate. Catherine was only a 35-bed accommodation. But in a large company, you'll find that there's a lot of pressure on the staff to work to a very tight schedule, because money is what matters to them. If possible, and depending on how your relative reacts, try and help staff as we did, as I did, to develop an action plan to follow before a particular activity will trigger unresponsive behaviour, because it does make the staff's life so much easier if they have cooperation, and if the resident is smiling and laughing and loving it. The need for staff to be vigilant. I will say that there's a tendency for staff to attribute any increase in confused behaviour to the progress of their rare dementia. Catherine was, as it says here, prone to dehydration, to UTIs. She displayed anxiety, but she doesn't know why she was uncomfortable. She occasionally blacked out with no recall of a seizure and became very prone to falls, occasionally out of bed, which doesn't make a problem. She had considerable weight loss, even though she was eating well, and she had prescribed nutrition supplements. And she frequently had a chest infection. And it's essential to be alert to this. Rapidly can become serious. She was twice hospitalised with the onset of pneumonia, and that can turn into sepsis very rapidly. Persons with rare dementia are more susceptible to become confused or have delirium caused by problems other than their dementia, physical health problems. Catherine had various illness episodes, but evidently they weren't from her disease. She had UTIs often, and they were compounded by her inability to express discomfort or to register pain, usually because she couldn't remember it. Before she had PCA, she had young onset Alzheimer's disease, so she already had memory problems before she had PCA, although PCA was the dominant feature when she went into the nursing home. But it does require staff to be acutely aware of emerging symptoms, and usually when these occurred, the floor staff would report it to the duty nurse, and then was escalated to duty GP if that was necessary. So how to assist? How can you, as a relative, assist? I won't go through all this in detail, but I will say that dressing for most people with dementia is very difficult. So I do recommend choosing loose-fitting, comfortable clothes, the easy zippers, minimal buttons, and Velcro is a saviour. I would suggest nothing too pricey, and this is my personal experience, as most homes industrial laundry and crazy hot tumble dryers going 24 hours a day can rapidly ruin fragile garments. And in the interest of expedient housekeeping, they usually chuck everything in the washer together. So don't expect darks and nices to be sorted out separately. It's just lob out in it goes. Although I do have to say that usually bedding is separate for obvious reasons, as you may appreciate. I would also say that keep an eye on the content of your beloved's wardrobe, as other residents' clothes often may appear, and your relative may be happily wearing them when you go to next visit. So label everything, it's crucial, including socks, and able labels, which are iron-on, are a godsend, because I couldn't sew to save my life. And dress, I wouldn't argue if your beloved insists on wearing the same thing every day, or she did yesterday. So I overcame this by having two of the things that she really liked. So one was in the wash and one was looking wonderful. So what did I find helped me cope? So care delivery, I established fairly soon in a workable relationship with the care staff and the registered nurses particularly. I managed to find that one nurse was assigned in overall responsibility for my beloved and several other residents, so they tended to split and share the responsibility. So a same nurse would try and watch what's happening with their assigned resident. Cooperation and communication between us and employed professionals is very, very useful. And I would say try and have confidence in addressing Catherine's care problems with the staff. It made a difference when I could go and actually talk on a one-to-one with somebody who knew what they were talking about. And then there was less embarrassment when there was a problem. And I suggest try and get some competence to understand the care system, know who is who you can turn to, and particularly with funding benefits and things like that. And I tried to maintain a consistent visiting pattern every day, or as many days as I could, that fitted in with their daily routine. And the last point, difficult to do, but I do try and recommend it. These are really what I tried to assess when I was asked the question, predominantly by Sarah, what Catherine felt. And it was extremely difficult to try and work out what she did feel, because she didn't, she was extremely compliant, which was a wonderful asset. But she did display some of these issues from time to time. And I would just say that the ones most prevalent were indignation and resentment. Indignation about being dealt with by other people, and resentment about being there. She didn't appreciate she had it, but she was depressed and she was on medication to avoid that. But the helplessness and the loss of the sense of her independence was something that manifested itself after a while. And personally, I also had many feelings, and realising these helped me cope with the situation. I won't again go through them all, but the ones that were crucial to me were the new responsibilities of worrying about her care in the care home, and particularly the worry of affordability and the impact on us. We managed to burn through £75,000 in the 20 months that she was in hospital, in the care home. And I imagine, like everything, it's gone up since then. I also felt less involvement and a sense of loss in some circumstances. And I had to accept my new routine of daily visiting. It changed what I did as a regular basis. And unfortunately, the anxiety, the inevitable outcome role that was going to be at the end. As Catherine approached the late stage even, she developed these aspects: less interest in food, she started to become withdrawn, mental deterioration, physical deterioration, and her frailty became evident, and mostly she would just reflex to requests and stimulation. And she had, as ever, declining faculties with the PCA: memory, speech, sight, slow reactions and minimal response. And she could no longer physically see me and recognise my face when I went to visit her. And after a while, her energy reduced and she spent more and more time in bed. And I just would describe my own feelings, my hidden burden during these later stages. I call it a burden. It was a burden in the sense that I had to come to terms with it. So the mental strain and the feeling of letting Catherine go, and the self-recrimination about did she need to be in a care home. But in retrospect, it was the best place for her for the last couple of years of her life. And the social dislocation, in some respects, that was a benefit, because I didn't have to explain to people what our relationship was and why Catherine was compromised when she was at home. I did find that the interaction with the care home personnel was actually helpful, and I had a better regard for their role and how carers, professional carers, look after people. Inevitably, I had to bear the financial pressures I just mentioned of funding her professional care, but in hindsight, it was a very wise investment. And the psychological impact, the anticipation of what ultimately was down the road. But there were some positive things to come out of it. I had enhanced companionship and befriending with the care staff. It preserved Catherine's dignity. It was vital for the resident who's being cared for in a care home. I felt a sense of accomplishment, and care was being professionally and well delivered, something I could continue to do at home. And it fulfilled our original commitment when we got married through to whatever was down the road. Important things I learned from her time in the care home: be attuned to the vulnerability of the residents in the care home and their inability to express themselves and cry out or shout out if they feel they're being put upon. But do be patient. The affected person needs time to process things, to react and to do stuff. And I learned compromise is the key to harmony, not confrontation with the care home staff. If something's not right, find an opportunity to discuss it quietly and then see if you can resolve it. There was one wonderful lady, wonderful in hindsight. She used to come in every afternoon, same time. She'd go and see her husband, let's call him Norman, not his name. And she would interrogate him to see, have you had a shave today? What did you have for breakfast? What time did you get up? You haven't done the Telegraph crossword. And poor Norman, he just let it float over his head because he didn't want to be bothered. And I said to this young lady, 83 she was, I said, giving him a question and answer isn't going to help him. And she used to leave on the dot of supper time, 6 o'clock, and he used to look at me and go, so I just say array dementia is an uncommon type of degenerative brain disease. It can cause abnormal behaviour, not only with the resident, but sometimes with the carer. And it's not the person's fault or their true personality. Finally, the advert. Carry on. So I hope that's been helpful to you, and I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert, and you've been an absolutely fantastic help with actually educating care home staff now. It makes such a difference. And, you know, when Robert's speaking to them, they're like, oh, really? That's a good idea, isn't it? So yeah, it's made a huge difference. Right, we're going to go straight on now to Mihoko, and I've known Mihoko for several years, and I had a real privilege of supporting Mihoko and her lovely husband, Roy, and she's going to tell you all about her story from caring for Roy at home. So thank you. Thank you. Just make sure that you can see you're about the same size as me, so it's fine. We can fine. Yeah.
Okay. Hello. Okay. I'm going to read because time is restricted, and then I have got so much things that I want to say, so I put it into the word. So forgive me if I sound very plain. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mihoko. Thank you very much for having me as a speaker today. I'm delighted to be able to contribute to this seminar based on my experiential home care work. As you can see from this photograph, this is Roy. He enjoys going out to various places and eating ice creams and delicious food whenever possible. That's him. So this photograph is actually his mid-stage. So still we are going quite actively and then enjoyed our life. I looked after him at home for nearly 7 years. Roy was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in August 2015, and then after several months, he was diagnosed with young onset Lewy body dementia. He was 54 years old, and then I was 46 years old. So, it was a huge shock blow to us, and then our life changed totally since then. Although he was diagnosed with this illness, he was surprisingly very pragmatic and calm. He quickly accepted his diagnosis and then decided to carry on his life as normal as possible. It's amazing, he was so pragmatic. And then even he continued the project that me and Roy had, which is, we published a book. So that's like talking about British culture to the English learning students in Japan. So actually, it's selling well. It's on Amazon as well. It's on the Kindle as well. So it shows it's pretty good. And if you go to the major bookshops in you can see it. So please check if you have a chance. So that's my intellectual property, actually. Yes. So we have this kind of lifestyle, and then, but I am the one who found it extremely difficult to accept this diagnosis, and then questioning repeatedly why us. So that was always in my mind. So Roy's wish was he wanted to continue his normal life, so okay, and then also he was quite clear that he wanted to stay home as long as possible. And then I wanted him to stay home, so that was our clear understanding. And then, as I said, Roy was quite pragmatic. So even well before his diagnosis, we had already had a will and also LBA each other. And also we had an emergency plan because we don't have children. And also I don't have a family here. And also Roy's family has got their own lives. So we are just on our own. So in a way, it's kind of we are prepared before diagnosis. So this is a photograph. This is again mid-late stage of Roy. And then we still traveled and also go to various places. Even we went to Japan. And then he was able to travel for 12 hours flight journey. British Airways, fantastic. Disabled assistance, please use, definitely. And also, Roy liked music, so we went to concerts, and then also we went to like a Wimbledon tennis. And then Roy went to lots of exercise class, so top 2 is one of the exercise class Roy went to for the Parkinson's disease. Part left one is a volleyball, that's again in Kingston, near us, and the middle is one exercise class in Wimbledon, and we ended up seeing Darcy Watson. So, and also the other things he enjoyed was Music for Life, that is music therapy for young onset dementia. So those things were really, really helpful, even like a mid-late stage. So the last one on that photograph, bottom right, is the our final sort of like a big journey to Japan, and then we went to a very, very nice cafe to eat this nice, like a strawberry cafe. Of course, they are challenging and complicated programs. Roy was very sensitive towards his medication, and its side effect gave him the series of psychosis. As a consequence, one of the occasions in the late 2018, he ended up staying at St. George Hospital for nearly 8 weeks to take off his existing medication and introduce new medication. This wasn't easy at all, and then trial and error continued endlessly. Having said that, we had a very positive outcome. During his stay, we met a wonderful medical team led by Professor Francesca Morgante. She is a specialist for Parkinson's disease, and also her fellow consultant. This was a big game changer for us, and since then they have monitored Roy regularly until the end, even they turned up in the final days, his days at the hospital to talk to him. Even though staying at hospital for over 8 weeks did not help him physically and cognitively, we are quite content with ourselves at this stage, with help from our wonderful carers, Cecilia just over there, and also Sebastian. They are brother and sister. I was able to go to work and then visit to Japan to see my family and friends, while they stayed with Roy at our own home, so that we could continue his life as normal. Ironically, lockdown started in March 2020, and then after the first lockdown, his health began to deteriorate very quickly. This was summer 2020. He had massive psychosis due to, again, the side effects from his medication. And then we all agreed to withdraw all cognitive-related medication. So at this stage, he was just only have a Parkinson's medication, and then that's it. Soon after this episode, he contracted UTIs, and then this led him to develop sepsis within such a short amount of time. Even I was told that he won't have long left. However, he miraculously recovered, that's Roy, and then insisted that he wanted to go back home. So that's the things that maybe individual case or type of dementia. Roy's cognition, even though without cognitive medication, he's quite complementous. So we were able to communicate quite well. Unfortunately, sepsis took away almost all of his mobility, and then he needed help in every step of his daily life. Then I had to think hard, how could I look after him at home? Because know that he definitely wants to go back home. So I still clearly remember that I felt so scared and anxious about our future. So to determine home care is for the best option for your loved one or myself, I made a kind of like this kind of checklist. Going through this checklist, sorry, so many things I wouldn't have the time to go into the detail, but it is clear for me that I definitely needed more help as we are on our own. As I said, my family is in Tokyo, Roy's family is all over the place, and we don't have the children. So just two of us and a plus dog. So that dog becoming quite important in my life too. We also knew that we wouldn't be able to get any help from social services after the financial assessment and the carers assessment. So I started making this list to clarify our needs for home care. Just in this slide, I would like to highlight a few points. Firstly, the importance of maintaining the quality of Roy's lifestyle Roy liked. He was a social person with a big smile and enjoyed talking to people with his calm and warm manner. And he enjoyed meeting up with new people. Because of COVID restrictions and his physical decline, we could not attend activities in person. Instead, we attended activities for Parkinson's exercise class via Zoom or FaceTime. Also, we are still able to live with our dog, Leo Yoki, at home. This was a quite important element in our life because it gave us a certain level of normality. As some of you know, Leo is a very small dog, 4.5 kilograms, but has a big personality and it makes sure he's here. So he wanted to come here, but I said stay home. So he is very proactive carer as well. So if you have a dog, really good. If you have a pet cat, really good. Secondly, it is crucial for me as his carer to be able to fit physically and mentally. Home caring is 24/7 and it's challenging, exhausting and draining at all levels. It's beyond your comprehension. But I always said to myself, if Roy is in my shoes, he will do the same or may do better than I do. This kept me going. I always describe my position as a conductor of the orchestra. Without a conductor, the orchestra can't perform. So it means if I am not well, I won't be able to look after Roy. So remember that your well-being is a paramount to all types of care. Thirdly, please accept the fact that you cannot care your loved one on your own, whatever the stage is. You need help. I often hear, my husband or my parents or my partner don't like carers coming in, or, oh well, we are managing. We are okay, so we don't need care at the moment. Yeah, it's okay. That's quite a common phrase, but based on my personal experience, you need to overcome these hurdles and introduce carers as soon as possible. It will take time to form a comfortable and sustainable relationship among your loved one, carers, and your support network. Once it's established, it will support both your loved one, and you enormously. I know that it's so helpful. It's like a savior. It's saved my life. For example, Roy was of course didn't like the idea of having Sebastian, the carer, around him. He just didn't like it initially. But Sebastian kept on popping in just to say hello or to have a chat. And then started going to the football game together because Roy was Arsenal's season ticket holder. And then Arsenal was brilliant to help him, to lead him to his seat every time. And then also, they just went to a lot of different activities together. And then, according to Roy, he started teaching Sebastian how to play table tennis. I'm not sure how much truth in his words. I need to check with Sebastian. But Sebastian said, oh, he's a pretty good table tennis player, so I believe Sebastian. More support network you have, more you feel safe, and then less feel isolated. As a carer, I was always worried about what would happen to Roy if I become ill or have accident and I won't be look after him. It's a good idea to talk openly to the member with a support network about what if scenario, as you never know what's around the corner. So I managed to set up Team Roy to support Roy and myself at home. Among this team member, any person can chip in whenever they can, whatever they can, wherever they are. For example, my sister and friend in the middle could not physically help me as they were in Tokyo. However, they talked to Roy via FaceTime or talked to me in Japanese so that I felt relaxed. Or my local friends on the left, Sarah and Sue, both were carers, regularly met up for quick coffee or shopping, or they asked me for any help. So that was very helpful. Then Cecilia and Sebastian on the left with Leo on the left. I told you that's why he's becoming important member of Team Roy. They are highly skilled and highly skilled, competent carer with a vast amount of experience. And more importantly, they are extremely compassionate and emphatic. I also had our two friends, Marie and Jeremy. They cooked constantly boys' favorite and my favorite food for me. So those kind of things are so helpful. Also, so Cecilia and Sebastian was always there. And one day they told me that, Mihoko, don't worry, we will look after Roy at home because we are family. Plus, we had a wonderful, wonderful community Parkinson's nurse, Holly. She was constantly by our side. So these kind of elements actually encouraged and reassured me to embark on home care Roy 24/7. Looking back now, I can confidently say that all of us had a really good relationship and they always had a good laugh. So at home care, it is important to maintain the quality of Roy's life as normal as possible. So once Roy got discharged from the hospital in October 2020, I managed to continue his life as normal as possible. As you can see on the slide, I have listed several key points and I will focus on a few. Firstly, for Roy to remain at home was very important, so it became crucial to get continuous healthcare package, including night care. At this stage, in addition to the escalation of, in addition to his Lewy body dementia, his Parkinson's symptoms contributed to the escalation of his physical deterioration. such as difficulties in speech and swallowing, also risk of falling, and also bed sore, because Parkinson patients find it quite difficult to move his bum or like shift. That kind of movement is always tricky. So if he's on the bed, it's really difficult to move his body easily. After extremely rigorous process of assessment and interview by continuous healthcare, Roy finally received continuous healthcare, and it enabled us to have 24/7 home care with additional care package. I have decided to use our own private funds to secure extra care, which allowed me to rest and recharge my body. Secondly, to maintain his social life was extremely important. Prior to his deterioration, we used to visit Starbucks with our little dog almost every day, and the Suffolk Frappuccino, which contains 608 calories. Good source of calories and also nutrition for Roy, but not for me. But it's turned out to be Frappuccino. It's such a good food because it has got really good cream, and also Roy had a whole milk, and then also good fat, and then chocolate or salt caramel. So that was his thing. So although he could not visit there anymore at certain stage, I went there on behalf of him to buy Frappuccino with my little dog. So when we going to the Starbucks, they know what I'm asking. So only they ask me which flavor and which size, because sometimes we demand large size, which is more than 600 calories. We are talking about 700, 750, so which is quite scary calories. He also enjoyed listening to Jazz FM, and somehow he managed to recognize presenter's voice. So that taught him what time we are in. So he said, "Oh, is this Frankenstein?" I said, "Yes." So it means like 11 o'clock. And also he continued watch and listen to BBC Breakfast News, and then recognize Charlie State's voice, because he met Charlie previously at his exercise class, Ballet Boys. One of the instructors at the Ballet Boys, Ali, her husband is Charlie. So he popped in at the end of term lunch or tea from time to time, and then Roy got on with Charlie quite well. So therefore, that was really good. So these kind of routine and enjoyable activities were so helpful for Roy to be stimulated, even he was on the bed. Thirdly, this was a bit of a coincidence, but just before he contracted UTIs in summer 2020, we have decided to rent a ground floor apartment with disability access while we are renovating our house to create one floor living for Roy. This turned out to be a big bonus and helped our life exceedingly. Easy access for paramedics and ambulance, and also even on the wheelchair, he was able to visit the communal lounge and beautiful maintained garden. I admit that it's not easy to carry on day-to-day life with lots of arrangement. On the top, I arranged a house move, so I was like screaming. But I had a lot of flexible support, and then I used my creativity and also planning, and then even like a mid-stage and also late stage, home caring can be achievable. And you can spend valuable time with your loved one. For me, this was a huge consolation after Roy passed away, knowing that I'd done everything I could possibly have done. Also, for their home care, it is quite important to maintain the quality of my life as normal as possible. And I'm sure lots of people, including yourself, ask regularly your loved one, "Oh, how are you?" how is you feeling today? How is your day? But you never ever ask yourself, how am I? How am I feeling today? How is my day? Because you are the lowest priority in a caring life. And then also, you have no time and no energy for yourself. However, please make a strong conscious effort to allocate some time to recharge your battery. Just watching Netflix or stupid comedy or just going out with a friend or doing some exercise in person or online. That's why you need to establish your support network. This allows you to do the things for yourself. Please remember that you are the conductor of the orchestra and you need to be fit and well to lead the orchestra. I have now learned this in a very, very hard way. I did go out every day while Sebastian and Cecilia were with Roy, but mainly to do his chores, and then I just collapsed in the bed to sleep for maybe 30 minutes. I even postponed my operation and dental treatment. As a result, I paid a huge price. I ended up with being on the ambulance for a few times, and then in addition, I had anemia, hysterectomy, migraine, and root canal treatment. And I'm still recovering from those programs. Equally, I strongly believe that your mental and emotional well-being is very important. So I listed on the second line. I was fortunate enough to receive 8 grief counseling sessions funded by local charity while I was caring for Roy. It may sound strange, grief counseling, because they thought that I needed, as I lost the relationship I used to have with Roy, so I'm already grieving. So they offered me 8 sessions. These sessions are very helpful to look at my emotions and feelings. I also had a very calm and understanding palliative nurse, and she said to me, Mihoko, I am here to support Roy as well as you. She told me this at our first meeting. This was a breath of fresh air. Nobody has never ever said to me this. I really wish somebody would have told me this at the start of my caring life. In fact, I think now that it should be a compulsory requirement for medical professionals and other social care system to look after all carers. This should be considered as part of duty of care. So, sadly, Roy passed away in February 2021 due to aspiration pneumonia at St. George's Hospital. Nobody expected this. Even Roy himself didn't expect this to happen. I had to make a very, very tough decision to withdraw all the medical treatment. That's so tough. It was and still is devastating experience for me. And it has given me emotionally and physically negative impact that I've never anticipated. Luckily, my local charity, Wimbledon Guild, offered me individual grief counseling session. And then that was very, very helpful. So it's really good idea to start having a counseling session or talking therapy session whenever the opportunity arises. At one of the sessions, my counselor, Paul, said to me, Mihoko, please remember, nobody can take away your memories with Roy. And memories never die. Please hold on to those memories. So, I am following her advice and now living with these funny and precious memories. So he enjoys his food, and also that's it, and Leo and then Roy. So Leo is always looking for food, and as soon as Roy has something, his focus is on food. And sometimes they sleep together like this, and also that was Sebastian, his creative thinking come up to do the hair. dressing service at our house. So what Roy is wearing is rubbish bin, and then he's cutting, and then if you look at it carefully, there's a tape top up. That's called fragile. So he always have a top service from Sebastian. Thank you very much for listening to my story and Roy's story. I'm extremely grateful towards the support and the help I received while I was caring for Roy, including real dementia support. One day I sent a thank you message to Holly, the Parkinson nurse. She was being so wonderful and supportive. And then her reply was, "It has always been a pleasure to be involved in Roy's care. As you are both such a strong and inspiring people. I learned so much from you both, and then you helped me to be the nurse I am. This is Roy's legacy. I can now hear or sense that the Roy is telling me, Mihoko, you love your voice too much." So I have to stop. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you so much, and I think for many of us, the image of you as the conductor and the gentle encouragement to look after yourself will remain with lots of us in this room. We're so grateful to you, Mihoko, and to Robert for the wonderful stories you shared and for your openness about wonderful, moving and funny stuff, but also some really, really tough stuff as well. There'll be plenty of time this afternoon and over lunch to ask questions individually of Mihoko and Robert. But for now, I just wanted to, we're going to introduce our dear friend, Professor Dawn Brooker, who's going to speak to us before lunch. Just to, most importantly is if you describe yourself. I don't want to steal your thunder, but Dawn's an emeritus professor at the University of Worcester, where she set up and ran for many years the Association for Dementia Studies, which has been really, really influential. And your work in person-centred care and establishing the meeting centres initiative in the UK and so many other areas has been really important. But I think one of the things that Dawn is most known for and recognised for, indeed recognised in the New Year's Honours list as Professor Dawn Brooker MBE, is her real passionate commitment to blending together not just professional perspectives about dementia but lived experience. And so that's some of what she'll bring to us today and talking about some of her Namaste work. So Dawn, thank you so much for
being with us. That was a very good Namaste. Thank you very much, and thanks to Nikki and you for inviting me, and all of you for being here. We're running a little bit late. If my bladder is anything to go by, other people's bladders are probably filling up. So if you want to have a quick comfort break and don't feel that you've got to stay till the bitter end of what I'm saying today. And I've already learned so much this morning, and thanks to Robert and Mihoko. Just fantastic presentations. Now let's see if I can deal with the. There we go, you see that's a picture of me, so I know I'm in the right place. I'm going to talk about something called Namaste Care. Has anybody heard of that or experienced it? We've got one person there, great. Sort of, yeah. It's all right, I'm not going to ask you to do the talk. I'm quite happy to do that, but useful to hear people's experiences. So, Namaste Care was started by this lady called Joyce Zimmermann, who's Californian and a marvellous example of somebody in her late 70s who is still working and still passionate about what she does. And she used to work as an activities coordinator across a large number of care homes in the States. And she realised that for a large proportion of the people in care homes, Our regular sort of activity, like Robert was saying, the quizzes, the entertainment, the big stuff, often doesn't hit the spot for people who are living with much more advanced dementia, who need that more sort of stuff that's happening around them rather than going out, having that sort of stimulation and activity, which is so important. But if it's not tailored to your needs, then it might as well not be happening. So she brought together what she called Namaste Care, and I'm going to show a little film in a minute which demonstrates it much more eloquently than I can. But I suppose I got interested in it because I think there is very little that is around therapeutically for people with much more advanced dementia. And we know that they're the group who are most vulnerable to poor quality care. So in my book, anything that we could do to improve our offer to people at that stage is important. And Joyce had been running workshops, and she's written a lovely book, and we'd run a few workshops at my university. But what I noticed happening with particularly care homes who were coming forwards to learn how to run a Namaste Care session was that often it didn't sustain. They'd perhaps try it for a couple of weeks, or it would happen when they had time to do it, but it wasn't getting utilised as part of regular practice in care homes. So we managed to get a grant 2016 to 2019 from the Alzheimer's Society, and what we did was to look at how care homes could actually implement this as part of everyday practice. And we worked with 6 care homes over a period of 6 to 9 months, really looking at their staff development and what they'd need to do in terms of their management to make this happen. And we also looked at the sort of health economics of it, how much it cost to do a Namaste session on a regular basis. But important, and I can talk about the research forever, but I won't. Can over lunch if you want me to. But what we did at the end of that was to develop some nice films, and we've got some very step-by-step practice guidebooks that are downloadable for anybody that's interested in implementing this in a UK setting. So I think that's the other part of you know, stuff from California and the US often doesn't translate particularly well into, you know, regular care homes with regular people in the UK, you know. Anyway. So what I want to do now is to show you a film. Now, I am thinking I've got an instruction about how to do this. Let's make sure it works. And this is, we did 2 films at the end of our research project. What we're going to look at is the 4-minute sort of taster, so it helps you understand what it's all about. This is focused on putting it into a care home setting. There's also, though, these are on YouTube, a longer 25-minute film, which is really geared up to people working in care homes. So if you're working with a care home, or you've got a relative, you know, in a care home, we've got some good resources that they can also look at, and you might want to look at it if this floats your boat. Right. Might this work? Let's see.
Namaste Care is a structured way of really supporting people who are living with advanced dementia. It originated in the United States, and the word Namaste is a Hindu saying which means to honour the spirit within.
Namaste Care is a sensory intervention, so it's really important to pay attention to all the different senses, and both in terms of the different things that are used within Namaste Care, but also how people are managing to respond to those.
evidence now to suggest that this Namaste Care improves people's quality of life, and it decreases that sense of agitation that can sometimes accompany dementia. And for other people, it stimulates them, so it perhaps helps us to reach those people who might otherwise be quite locked in to their emotional state.
I think the important thing is that it almost takes people out of themselves, because I think people with severe dementia can get very quiet and withdraw, if you like, so it's difficult to get through to them. So I suppose it's a way of reaching out to people and for them to reach out to the outside world.
My family has a hands massage, which I feel is so important. The human touch is so important.
Coming into the Namaste room every morning for quite a number of weeks, it's taken the aggression away.
Namaste Care doesn't take any extra staff. It's about the reorganisation of staff and involving them in doing activities rather than just an activity coordinator.
It's just so warm and it's lovely. I would really recommend implementing it in your care home.
Still with me. Oh, good. You just get back into the presentation. Okay, so I hope that gives a flavour of what it's about. So it's very sensory and it's trying to engage those senses. And I think one of the important things about Namaste Care, it's not rocket science, it's not doing anything radical, but it's bringing together all of those practices that we know can really help support people living with more advanced dementia. The key thing I think the key piece of learning that I took away from it is the more often that you do it, the better it is. You know, so in care homes, this is a daily practice. It should be something that occurs every morning or every afternoon, whatever the point is. And the more people do it, the greater the benefits are in terms of decreasing that agitation and helping people open up. So what about family carers then? So most of our research to date has been in care homes and hospices. But there's no reason why you can't do the sort of Namaste Care experience on a one-to-one in people's own homes. And indeed, a lot of the family carers that we've had on our research projects started doing exactly that. You know, the principles are the same, providing that space for something that's quite sensory and pleasurable, that isn't based around delivering care, you know, or entertainment. And the other thing I think I'd say about family care is that when a person is living in a care home, again in our experience, families can act as real catalysts for getting this going. So knowing that this is an approach that can be used enables, once you've established that good relationship, Robert, with your care home staff, it's the sort of, have you seen this? Have you seen, have a look at the YouTube video, and certainly some of the volunteers that one of the care homes used in our study was a family member who then got a paid role as a Namaste Care coordinator. So I think families are enormously important in the Namaste field. So the overview of the key elements, this is in a care home, would be daily sessions, getting people, as you might appreciate, into a room, doing a session and then getting them out of a room means that you've got to say this is about a 1.5 hour process. If you're just doing it on a one-to-one, you might just be doing 15 minutes. And we found it worked better in homes that had a dedicated Namaste space. So a room where they could take people that was already a beautiful room to spend time in. You can do it on the dining room table, but it means you have to get all your equipment out to do it. Within our study, what you need is a Namaste Care worker who is a care worker within that home, and that is based on your usual staff to resident ratio. So if your resident ratio is 1:6, you would expect a Namaste Care worker to be working with 6 residents within a session. And it's the provision of both that physical and psychological comfort, skincare, and little bits of treats of food and drink. With that focus being on the 5 senses and the emphasis on the use of therapeutic touch. So we're not doing things to clean somebody up or help them eat in that more traditional way, but it's about that feeling cared for, and that it should be within the care home, we've always said, should be inclusive of family members. So family members may choose to be part of that Namaste session and provide that expertise, which the care staff often may not have in the same way. So if you're thinking about how you create that Namaste space, that right atmosphere, usually using natural light or the ability to alter light levels, so avoiding really strong electric light, using specific and calming aromas, things like lavender, lemon, orange, rosemary, not artificial aromas. Thinking about what your sort of background sound noise, that sound of music is, setting that, the sort of mood music that we had playing through that video is the sort of thing. It's not music for entertainment, it's to set the atmosphere. And the same with the sort of background and visual stimuli. You've got a large screen having things like the fish or something on that is going to bring the atmosphere to be calm. If you're running a session, either on a one-to-one or in a group, you have a beginning and end, so people are welcomed in, we have a start to this session and people are made to feel comfortable. You then go into some sort of fairly relaxing stuff, and then towards the end of the session you brighten it up again. You might lighten make the music a bit more energetic or bring the lighting up. So that people can come into the session, relax, and then come out of it again, so that they go into their regular routine. So the overall ambience, you're paying attention to the feeling of the space and your 5 senses. And then within the content, first of all, you're looking very much at people's physical comfort, and this gives you a really good opportunity to pay attention to pain and to look for signs that people physiologically may be struggling, so how people are sitting or the vocalisations they make when they move. And again, something that often care staff don't pick up on routinely, But if you're training them to do that at the beginning of each Namaste session, they're likely to pick up on things before they escalate into something more serious. Food, so little treats, you know, frappuccino, absolutely, you know, a little frappuccino for everybody. So the emphasis is on the sensory sensation, the treat element of it, and hopefully if you can pack them full of a few calories and some hydration as well, all the better. The same with continuous hydration, ice lollies, smoothies, those sorts of things. Bringing nature in, you know, the use of plants, leaves, seasonal themes. We have people who've brought snow in from outside when it's snowing, you know, or if you're at home, you know, literally you can do this outside or in the conservatory by the doors or whatever. And that use of expressive touch, you know, we saw Bill talk about how important it was that his wife's hands were massaged. And massaging with oil, we did this research during COVID, and so we got into a lot of hand washing with bubbles, you know, so it's how you're using that sensory time. And there's some really, you can get anything on YouTube these days. This is a YouTube clip which shows you very, you know, step by step how to do a hand massage. If it's something you feel anxious about, practice it on somebody else before you go into it with a loved one with dementia. And you're thinking about the quality of attention in that massage and transfer it. You can use, often what we hear is with care staff saying it helps them then, when they're doing other care activities, to be more aware of how they're touching the person, or how they're washing their face or brushing their hair. And then we found that, you know, there's following elements that could be used in a highly individualised way. And again, if you're doing this one-to-one, you can really ramp this side of it up. Using individualised playlists, you know, what is a soothing music for that particular person, or things that they would like and would relax to. Engagement with dolls and soft toys. Again, it's something that we use quite regularly now in care homes to give that sense of holding something or feeling comfort from a doll or a soft toy. And then we've got our furry friends as well, engagement with animals during that. For a lot of people that's very therapeutic, for some it's highly untherapeutic. So it's about knowing how that individual is going to interact with the animal or with the soft toy. And thinking about significant items that you might bring in that would help to stimulate or to calm the person. And then on the far side, we've got all sorts of weird and wonderful materials, snoozling equipment and sensory equipment that most care homes would have bought at some time and often end up sitting in a cupboard because they've lost the instruction manual for them and no one knows how to work them anymore. But those can be very well incorporated into a Namaste session. And thinking about, you know, if you were doing a personalised Namaste, how that would be created. You know, if you think about a personalised Namaste care box, favourite musics, sounds or musical instruments, favourite moisturiser that's appropriate to that person's skin, hairbrush, grooming kit, manicure kit, photographs, poetry, bringing the outside in, those sort of seasonal objects, textured material that the person likes, aromatherapy scents, particularly if there are treasured smells or things that trigger happy memories, favourite finger food, favourite drinks, favourite objects, and a book to look at or to read extracts from. So, you know, you're thinking about the person you're supporting, what would be in that box that you could then use as a basis for these sessions.
Well, huge thanks again, Dawn, and obviously to Mihoko, Robert as well. It's time to break for lunch, and we'll adjust the schedule, go and enjoy some time together, some food, and we'll bring you back a little bit later on. Thanks.